A very warm morning to all respected judges. It is a pleasure for us to be here today and be part of this competition. So, I will going to introduce my teammates that will be taking part in this competition. The first one is TRINETRA. TRINETRA will be talking about the author and synopsis. Moving on to the second is Ahmad Al-WALID. Walid will be talking about the time, places, and social setting. Then we have Daniel. Daniel will be explaining about the plot techniques. And then Megan Mulder. Megan will be talking about the characters and also Iman Kasrina. And then the themes will be elaborated by Adlina Afza. After that, Ainun Naja will be talking about the moral value. Then you have Nur Atira. Atira will be talking about the lesson learned. And then Lily Maisara will be talking about the literary critique. And last but not least is Aina Sofia. Aina will be talking about the language style of Dear Mr. Killmer. So, today we're going to review a novel called Dear Mr. Killmer. Dear Mr. Killmer contains 134 pages and a lot of meaningful events. Without further ado, I will start this book review with our first presenter, and that is Trinetra.
Good afternoon to everyone. So today I'll be sharing with you guys some informations about the author and synopsis of novel Dear Mr. Killmer. First of all, I would like to start off with the author. So the author of this novel is Anna Shroff. She was born in Cleveland, Ohio. She received both a bachelor's and master's degree from California State University, Ohio. And Shroff taught high school for 10 years at the Academy of Our Lady of Peace, San Diego, California. As a child, Shroff widely traveled in the United States with her family. They made their journeys in a camping trailer and had many wild adventures. Shroff frequently draws from those rich experiences to create her stories. Shroff paid her way through college by writing stories for magazines. Since college, she has written hundreds of stories and more than 80 books, including historical fictions, biographies, science books, and her most favorite, fictional books for young people. Shroff describes herself as multicultural, low middle class neighborhood, including African Americans, Filipino Americans, and Mexico Americans, is her greatest inspiration when she's writing. So now that we are done with the author, let's move on to the synopsis. So this story is all about Richard Nine. Richard, a farm boy who's passionate about writing poems. Unfortunately, he cannot relate well with his brother, who appears to be more interested in hunting animals and sports. Richard finds himself unable to kill animals as he finds them really beautiful. Richard's father understands his pain, but also tells him that death is a part of life. In school, Richard gets a chance to hear a poem by Joyce Killmer and is impressed by the thoughts in it. With the support of his teacher, he begins a correspondence with Killmer and also mentions that he writes poems. This starts a beautiful relationship between Richard and Killmer. Killmer joins the army to fight the enemy. Richard worries as it would affect the way people treat foreigners in his own town. The student Hannah is shunned by her own classmates because of a German background. Richard stands to support her and is ostracized too. Richard and Hannah became good friends. Some of the town people rally around when they realize that Hannah's family is patriotic to the country that they live in. There was one day where Killmer gets killed in the war. It is most heartbreaking for Richard and is shattered by the news. Richard writes a beautiful poem about losing a friend and it appears in the local newspaper. Richard is surprised and comforted when his father tells him that the poem the pain expresses the pain that he felt when he lost his brother in another war. There is a mutual understanding as father and son talk over things that have not mentioned before. The war too comes to an end, and Richard hopes that anti-German sentiments will also fade. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trinetra, for your thorough explanation. From what we've heard from Trinetra, I think we can already tell what the novel is about. Even though Trinetra doesn't explain to us the whole story in detail, I am already interested in reading the story. I want to discover more about the novel and about the story in there, Mr. Killmer. Let's move on to the next one, and that is Ahmad Al-Walid.
Okay, thank you, Farisha. Today I'm going to talk about the place, time, and also social settings for the book Dear Mr. Killmer. First of all, we're going to go through place settings, which is one of them going to be at Iowa in America. This is where Richard Knight lives and also where he makes a living with his brother, his sister, and also his father. There he also makes a living where he could go to make hunting the deers with his family. Next, we're going to go through school where he learns and has enjoyable classes. He also learns about Mr. Killmer there in one of the poets that his teacher taught and also poets. However, he was also bullied at school for making poetries and was disregarded as a sissy and also befriending a German girl named Hannah. After that, we're going to go through Hannah's home. This is where Richard expresses and shares his poems with Hannah and also builds up a close relationship with her. And one of the most unfortunate events is in the war trenches in Europe, where there is a lot of people who sacrifice their lives during the war, which includes a heartbreaking moment and heartbreaking truth of the death of Mr. Killmer. Next, we're going to go through time settings, which is in World War One, which is in 1970. This is where the US declares war against Germany, and a lot of young men died and sacrificed during the war. And last but not least, we're going to go through social settings, which first of all is going to be the residents of Turtle Lake. The war polarized the people and making people from the other countries or foreigners look suspicious, such as the Shermers were ostracized even though they were patriotic. For example, Otto, one of the family members of the Shermers, joined the US Army to fight against the Germans. But even though they joined the US Army, he was still ostracized, such as going and the Shermers were humiliated by the residents of Turtle Lake by the residents vandalizing their tavern. Not only that, Hannah was also harassed by her classmates for being a German. Then we're going to go through upper middle class, which is consists of teachers and also the servers. And then the lower middle class, which is the farmers that resides in Turtle Lake. I think that is all from me in for the place, time, and social settings. Thank you.
Thank you, Walid. Your explanation is very fascinating. I think I think there's a lot of important I think there is I think there is a lot of important events that took place in an important time and places. Time and places is the highlight of the events that happens in the story. Let's move on to the next one. And that is Daniel Hakim.
Hello and good afternoon, a bit to everyone present here. My name is Daniel Hakim and I'll be talking about the plot of the novel of Dear Mr. Killmer. Firstly, we've got exposition. Mrs. Hanson, the English teacher, reads a poem called Trees by Joyce Killmer in class. In the class, Joyce Killmer is said to have volunteered to fight in the war in Europe. Next, we have Rise in Action. The events in this bit are very much more interesting. On the way home, Richard sees his classmate, Hannah Shermer, crying. He notices that the words Dirty Hun were scribbled on the cover of a book. However, when Richard tells what happened to some of his classmates. They feel that she deserves it because her parents are Germans. At home, he decides to write to Joyce Killmer. 3 weeks later, Mrs. Hansen tells the class that the tavern belonging to the Shermers had been vandalized. She brings a card for the students to show their sympathy, but at the end, only Richard signs it. Now we move on to the most interesting part of the novel, which is the climax. When school reopens and Mrs. Hansen announces to the class that they will hold a patriotic program to help sell Liberty bonds to raise funds for the war. An essay writing competition will be held. The girl who writes the best essay would play Lady Liberty, and the boy who writes the best essay would play the role Doughboy. Richard wins the part of Doughboy, and Hannah was chosen to play Lady Liberty, and the class is, well, unsurprisingly, shocked and angry with Mrs. Hansen's decision. After all that climactic and quite thrilling events, we now will go to the falling action. Hannah declines the role of Lady Liberty, and Richard also declines the role of Doughboy. Richard's father then tells him that someone has come to their house and tells him that Richard was probably unpatriotic. Finally, we have the resolution. Joyce Killmer is killed in the battle. Richard dedicates a poem to him and is published in the local newspaper. His father understands why Richard writes poetry. Their relationship improves greatly. Meanwhile, the war in Europe ends and Hannah's brother, Otto, returns as a war hero. Gus, however, still needs to serve in the army for the years to come. Now I'm going to give you my personal opinion about this book. I think that this book has loads of incredible life lessons, or dare I say, every page of it contains some good stuff to apply in our daily life. Moreover, the book has got a good plot twist at the end, and although it does not have complicated plot lines like those famous critically acclaimed books like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or even Harry Potter, it could still penetrate our feelings all the same. When Mr. Killmer died in the battle, it was quite a shock, and it really was the highlight of the novel. Furthermore, the structure of the plot is really something extraordinary. It is one of the things that makes the reader does not want to put down the book even for 1 second. All in all, it's a very good book for those who want to start reading as a hobby. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I think so too. It is a very interesting and exciting story. We don't want such a simple and plain story. With this kind of plots, the story will be more interesting and exciting. Let's move on to the next presenter, and that is Megan Mulder.
Um, Thank you for the introduction. I will now share to all of you about the protagonist of the novel, which is Richard Knight. Richard Knight is a 15 years old boy from Iowa. He is a 10th grader in school. He has a tall and slender figure. He also has pale skin. In the novel, it has been mentioned that Richard Knight actually resembled his mother. This statement can be found in page 2 of the novel. Now we'll move on to his characteristics. Firstly, Richard is a very loving boy because he thinks that animals should not be hunted down unnecessarily. He cries when his grandpa kills a deer in front of him when he is young. Other than that, Richard speaks up for some students. Richard speaks up for some of the students who does not want to sign the sympathy card for Hannah. He tells Mrs. Hansen that they want to sign the card but are afraid to do so. Besides than that, Richard keeps hoping that the war would end before Mr. Killmer went uh, went to Europe. He is also worried that Gus might be killed in the war if he enlisted himself into the army after his graduation. Next, Richard is also a very soft-hearted boy. The evidence that could clearly depict these characteristics of his is when Gus, Pa, and Richard are walking to look for their prey. Richard feels his gun as heavy as lead because he is hesitant to kill. Also, as they Richard, Gus, and Pa quietly wait for a deer, Richard silently prayed that no deer would turn up that day to drink at the river so that he would not have to kill it. After that event, he admits to Pa that he did not have the heart to kill the buck he was supposed to, so he purposely missed his shot. Uh, in the novel, it has been shown that Richard is a hardworking boy. The evidence that could prove this statement is when Richard does twice the amount of work than Gus did in the farm. Next, Richard also helps his sister in the kitchen after supper. And finally, Richard works hard in his studies and in return gets excellent grades in his exams. Finally, Richard shows thoughtfulness in the following events. As Richard walks home from school, he thinks about picking some flowers to for his sister to put on the table. Next, before Richard hands the card to Hannah and her parents, he apologizes for what had happened and told them many people respect and they are fine citizens of the country. That is all from me. Thank you.
I see eye to eye with Richard. When I read the story, I fall in love with Richard's character. Richard's character throughout the story is really different from the others. We can really relate his character with our own life situation. There should be a lot more people who's like Richard. Let's carry on with the next presenter, Iman Kasrina.
So thank you, Farisha. So today I will share with you guys two other important characters that help the main character's growth. And the first important character is the heroine itself. It is Hannah Shermer. So Hannah Shermer is a friend of Richard Knight, and they are classmates. Hannah has a pair of lovely blue eyes with blonde hair, just like cornstalk. She was born in Milwaukee, the largest city in the state of Wisconsin in the United States of America. And she has German roots, and her parents run the local tavern in the prairie dogs. So from the novel, we understand that Richard and Hannah have a really strong friendship. As exciting as it sounds, unfortunately, their friendship did start really well. This is because Hannah saw that everyone in the class doesn't like her, just because her family has German roots. Their friendship starts when Hannah takes the first step, which is apologizing to Richard. She realizes that Richard was the only one who dares to sign this sympathy card that is supposedly being signed by all of the class members. She apologizes for her previous rudeness and thinks that it is really kind for Richard to do that for her. This proves that Hannah Shermer is an appreciative person, as she really appreciates Richard's courage to do so, although they aren't really close yet during the time. They are, in reality, we could relate to them so much because sometimes, just because of our simple, humble act to say sorry to someone for our wrongdoings, it somehow brings us things that we never thought could happen, and in this case, it brings them friendship. So moving on, in chapter 7, we can conclude that Hannah Shermer is also a person who is willing to give in for the sake of peace. This can be proven when Hannah politely turns down the role of Lady Liberty. This is because she wanted to stop the prejudice that has been thrown onto her by her own classmates when Mrs. Hanson, their English teacher, announces to the class that she is chosen fairly and given the role. And most of her classmates disagree with the decision that was made. When finds out about this, he asks Hannah why she does that because she won the role fair and square. And Hannah tells him that she doesn't want to cause people more pain than they are already facing. Since Richard and Hannah have been friends, we could observe that throughout the story, Richard is becoming braver than he was at the starting of the story. When he is at a position where he needs to decide, he makes his own decision without following anyone's opinion that says otherwise. He decides with his own heart. Hannah didn't even force him at all to decline his own role as doughboy, but he did that anyways, not because of his classmates, but because he agrees with Hannah and he doesn't want her to do that all alone. And that is what we can call a true friendship. So moving on to our next second important characters, Joyce Killmer. Joyce Killmer is a famous American poet whose poem trees inspired Richard. He trains to be a soldier at New York Armory for the World War One that broke out that time. In the novel, Richard writes to him a lot. So at the beginning of the novel, we know that Richard is not like his brother Gus, who loves to go hunting and kill animals. Richard hates it so much that he purposely misses shooting the bug. His passion is writing poetry, but as much as he likes, he hides it from everyone. He keeps all of his poems in his locked drawer so that no one could know that he writes poetry. He does not have the confidence to tell people around him because they all believe that whoever writes poetry is considered not manly enough. But it all changed when his teacher introduced one of Mr. Kilmer's poems in class. Richard was mesmerized listening to it and decided to write to him a letter which he obviously did not expect to be replied. In the letter, he told his fear telling people about his patient and how lonely he felt. And unexpectedly, Mr. Kilmer sent a reply letter to Richard, giving him motivations to keep on writing poetry. He told Richard that fear is a part of life and he needs to overcome in order to become what he wants to become, to do what he wants to do as long as he is happy without it. And this shows that Mr. Kilmer is a humble guy. Although he is a famous poet and also a busy guy training to be a soldier, he still replies to Richard's letter to be a friend. He is also a helpful and understanding to Richard as he could relate very well to him when Richard tells him that lonely for having passion in poetry since there are less male people who does it. So he has confidence to open up to people around him that he writes poetry. Get to give Richard useful advices on police poems, and that is by continuing writing. So in this novel, Richard finally grew to a more confident person. He gains a lot of confidence for himself, Mr. Kilmer, and we see how important this is for with Mr. Kilmer's motivation and support, which finally opened up to his family and people around him regarding his patient without fear of how people are going to react to him. They were able to be more open and realize they could change that a guy can also write poetry. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. I felt it when Hannah was being discriminated by the others when because she's German. Personally, I think this kind of issues is still happening in our society and it is really heartbreaking to know that. There should be a lot more people who's like Richard that can be an eye opener for some of us. Let's hop on to the next presenter and that is Adlina.
Thank you, Farisha. Today I will be talking about the main themes. Hint on the novel written by a celebrated novelist Anne Schroff, who has Dear Mr. Kilmer as the greatest masterpiece. Several options of themes were found after studying the fiction novel, but there is only two that catch my eyes at the drop of a hat. First and foremost, prejudice and discrimination. In order to manifest my point, we can see how Richard treated Hannah fairly as friend, even though during that time America was having a war against Germany. It is absurd how others rejected her due to her background. Fight ignorance, not immigrants. Other than that, it was sad when the troublemakers vandalized the Sherman Tavern. Worst was, out of all students, Richard was the only one to send a sympathy card. As original he should be, Richard finds it unfair to think Hannah as a bad person, just because she's a German. We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry. And we must understand that all threats are equal in the value no matter which store they were bought from. Furthermore, the dynamic friendship. It is lucid that Richard and Hannah have a really close relationship, even though the other students are becoming mean towards them, especially Hannah. None of the slurs or judgments ever stop them from spending their quality time together and sharing thoughts. In reality, it's like needle in a haystack. To find someone to bond sincerely with you is quite impossible. At one point, I sometimes believe that Richard is hiding his romantic feelings for Hannah. Not to mention the understanding between Richard and Joyce Killmer is very much adorable. It was time for Richard to reach out to his family about his dream. He found a light in a dark space. As a pen pal should be, keeping in touch through letters with Richard, him and Richard share the same interest in poetry writing. It is indeed helping Richard. That is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Adelina. The quote, "fight ignorance, not immigrants," really caught my attention. There is nothing wrong to be an immigrant as long as you follow the rules. We need to stand on our own beliefs. We cannot be easily influenced by the others. Ignorant people who are lack of moral really need to be educated by fighting against their wills, unless you want unnecessary problems to happen in the future. Let's move on to the next presenter, Nur Ainun Najah.
Thank you, Farisha. So now I would like to share with you the moral values in the novel. So the main moral value in this novel is respect. This moral value should prevail to ensure harmony in the family or community. The characters that portray this quality so well is the Shermers and Richard. The Shermers displays love and respect for Richard, who is Hannah's only close friend. They welcome him into their home. Richard too shows tremendous respect to Hannah's parents. The fact that they are German does not bother him. To him, they are good American citizens, and they did not deserve to be treated so unfairly by the residents of Turtle Lake. Other than that, the moral value of perseverance that is portrayed by Hannah and her family, who persevere to be treated fairly by other residents. Hannah's schoolmates were very mean to her. They said that the Shermers were unpatriotic, and they also said the Shermers were Huns because they served Hun food at their tavern and they spoke German. Her parents' tavern was often vandalized and they were always being mistreated by some other people of Turtle Lake. However, her parents keep on doing their part to be treated as as the community. In addition, the moral value of optimism makes a person harbor hopes in achieving of what one wants. This in the case of Richard. He knows his family does not take the idea of him writing poems. However, he does not stop writing. He also shares his poems to the class. There might be hope in him that maybe one day his poems might be appreciated. True enough, Pa eventually accepts his poems and even becomes his critic. Richard's poems were also praised by Mr. Killmer in his past letters. That's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Najah. I hope we can apply the moral values in our daily life and start treating people with kindness instead of violence. And next, we are going to moving on to the next presenter, Atira.
Thank you, Farisha, for the introduction. So for today, I am going to talk about the lessons learned that we all can learn from the book. The first event is when Richard becomes the lone signer of the card, the sympathy card. Here are the lessons that we all can learn. This event has taught us that we need to be kind and show kind gestures to others, even if we do not really know them. Being kind does not mean you have to give people something. Being kind or kindness can be shown in terms of gestures. For example, Hannah was not really Richard's friend in the beginning, but when he was given the sympathy card, he signed it without a doubt. This shows that he sympathized Hannah and the events that befell her. However, the rest of his classmates did not sign the card because they were afraid or did not want to do so. Richard knew that Hannah and her family wouldn't hurt anybody, and he felt disgusted that people would do these things to the Shermans. By signing and sending this card personally, he was being very kind to Hannah. He even told Hannah that not all people in Turtle Lake are mean, some are nice and some are kind. The next lesson we all can learn is that we have to be brave and stand up for what we think that is right. For example, Richard is brave and courageous enough to be the only one who signed the card, even though a few of his classmates did not want to do so. It is also unbelievable to think that this hurt his classmates think that it was the right thing to do to not sign the card. Defacing the Sherman's property also, for them, they think that it was patriotic. Another lesson that we all can learn is that we shouldn't be blinded by prejudice. Prejudice blinds, kills, and destroys people, relationships, and good order in society. In this farming community, the ongoing World War I between Allies and Germany evokes fear, prejudice, mistrust, and judgmental attitudes. This passes down to the children who take it out on their American-German classmate Hannah. Even Richard becomes a victim. As readers, we have to make informed and wise conclusions about a person's words and actions. This is because rationality is often defeated by prejudice, fear, and herd mentality. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Atira. There is a lot of lesson in the novel that we can take it as an example, and we can also apply it in our daily lives. It doesn't hurt anybody to be kind and have some good personalities. We can also learn some of things about our society and how to handle them properly. Let's move on to the next person, that is Lily Maisara.
Thank you, Farisha, for the introduction. Today I'm talking about the literary critique of Dear Mr. Killmer. As we know, Dear Mr. Killmer is a story written by Anne Schraff, and it is a story about a young boy named Richard Knight, trying to find his courage and confidence in being a poet. Written in a digestible 134 pages, making it an easy quick read to many and might be preferred by young readers. The cover, bearing the picture of a soldier sitting in ruins of buildings, would surely attract curious minds, as people would think it would be yet another war-based story. People would also be pleasantly surprised of main content, which is the which the theme of war is fairly tame. The topics that the story bears are suitable and but also relatable and applicable to real life. Having to touch on topics such as xenophobia, which is the general fear of having to touch on topics such as xenophobia, which is the general fear of foreign people, or even the topics of self-visited community, as it is shown by Richard, who stood who stands true to his own beliefs against the ignorant people around him. Such topics, though may be sensitive to some people, mirrored the many struggles of the real world that everyone faced in their lifetime, which made the story that much more relatable to the readers in multiple ways. The plot of the story is well written and well paced, as it eases in the readers into a chilly start in the winter of Iowa, to the many discriminating acts done to Richard and Hannah, to the shocking news of the death of Mr. Joyce Killmer. The only complaint I have about the plot is that, in my opinion, the ending was a bit rushed. I admired and valued the touching recollection Richard had with his father as they talk about his uncle Roland, and it brings them to a bit of closure. However, I do wish to have the ending a bit prolonged to include reactions from other characters, such as Hannah, Mrs. Hanson, and some of his classmates towards his poem being published to the newspapers. In my opinion, this way it would give a bit more satisfaction to the readers as they witness Richard reaching a milestone. Other than that, I am most content with the rest of the story. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. I absolutely agree with Lily. When I read a book, I can simply understand about the story. But I think it is also a bit rushed. We can predict that Mr. Gilmer will die at the end of the story, but we want a little bit more closure within Mr. Gilmer and Richard. Let's move on to the last person, and that is Aina Sophia.
Hi, I am here to give a review on its language style. Um, the language style is one of salient points that we readers should know. This is because it will help us to comprehend and to imagine what the author delivers. Moreover, it is also very pertinent for the situations, and the poems that appear persistently are very comprehend and convivial for the readers. Hence, the readers won't have any obscurities whilst reading the novel. So the first language style that I have found in the novel is simile. One of the similes is, for instance, Kilmer's comrades had already been mowed down by enemy fire. Um, this can be shown when, like grain before a thresher, is mentioned in the novel. It means many men were killed by the enemy. At the same time, like how a stack of wheat are processed by a thresher. Okay, and then there are also flashbacks in the story. So first, Pa lost his Pa lost his wife and his brother many years ago, but he still couldn't get over it. There are several parts where these sad episodes were told about to the readers. Okay, and then next example is in the Deer Hunt episode. Richard recalls the secret tears he wept as a child of 8 when he saw his grandpa kill a deer. He reminisces that day the deer was standing there so full of his life and so majestic, but just a moment later, the deer was dead and full of blood, just because of grandpa. Okay, moving on. I have also found irony that are evident in the novel. So first, Roland Knight, Pa's brother, was a brave young man. He, thinking he was undefeatable, he enlisted and was sent to fight in Cuba. It was just a short war, but tragically and ironically, he was the only one who killed. Um, Another example is, ironically, Gus also thought he was undefeatable and enlisted without consulting Pa. However, to Pa's relief, World War One ended while Gus was in army training. So overall, it may be said that the language used in the novel is very satisfactory for our age because of its vivid writing style. So that is all from me. Back to you, Faisha. Okay.
Thank you, Aina. From my opinion and me myself as a reader, I think I don't have any difficulties while reading the book and I want to understand the story. Um, all in all, novel Dear Mr. Kilmer is very suitable for young readers to develop reading skills and sense of morality. There is so much we can learn from this book. It is also suitable for young readers to start reading as a hobby. From what we can learn from this book, violence is not always the answer for everything. As the saying goes, the pen is much mightier than the sword. That is all from us today. Thank you.